Next up, we have Mike. And Mike asks, or actually just kind of said that he would like to know more about weightlifting for weight loss. And I showed you the whole thread here just so we can have it. So if you're listening, at a later time on my podcast, I'm going to read everything. So I asked him any type of weightlifting specifically, because there's different types of ways to weightlift. There's Olympic weightlifting, there's powerlifting. He said the Smith machine, if possible, dumbbells would be his second choice. I said, and then he said he's just looking to add strength and mobility. And then I don't have the rest of the thread because he added to it after I had prepared the presentation for you guys, but he's looking to add strength and mobility and lose weight, and he said that it's been very difficult for him to do both. So, Mike, I don't know what your routine is per se. I'd have to take a close look at it to give you an 100% accurate answer, but I'm willing to bet, because I have a guy, I play softball, you guys know that. I play on a softball team, or several softball teams really, but we still have like a main group of guys that goes from, we have like 2, 3, 4 teams together. And there's a guy who's on most of my teams who's a very nice guy, but he's overweight. He's been overweight for a while. He goes to the gym, and yet this year he gained weight. And now his diet's not great. We've gone out to eat a few times afterwards, and not the best fare that he was ordering. Granted, it was just one meal. I don't know what he eats on a regular basis, but he kept putting on weight, and he became more and more immobile as the season went on. And he just recently came out, and he told me, and he told another guy, because me and another guy run most of these teams, and he said that he was lifting very heavy. He was powerlifting, and he was putting on muscle, but he, wasn't really burning fat. So it was a similar situation, and he wasn't sure why. And then, luckily, even the guy I run the team with is pretty well versed in fitness, and obviously one of my opinions. So I gave him some dietary advice, but on the fitness side, there's a few things you need to do. So it sounds like you're probably doing something called hypertrophy training. Hypertrophy training is when you're looking to build muscle. It's a very specific way to do it. You're basically lifting anywhere from 70 to 80% of your 1 rep max is what they call it. So anything you can lift in a certain way one time, and then you're like done. You're burnt out. That's all your body has. So you're lifting 70 to 80% of that for 8 to 12 repetitions, and you're doing anywhere from 3 to 5 sets. It's a very specific physical exchange that needs to occur in order to elicit muscle growth. And a lot of people, you go on bodybuilding.com, a lot of these free workout programs, they all have hypertrophy programs. And if you're a scrawny guy and you don't have much muscle, but you don't have much fat either, it's like a perfect program for you. But obviously, if you're here, that's not really the case. There's probably weight you want to lose. Mike, you said that later on in the thread after I put this show together for everybody. So what I would suggest, Mike, is a few things. So in terms of weightlifting, I would stick with compound lifts. And what are compound lifts? Compound lifts are the basics of weightlifting. They're the most functional exercises. So things like the bench press, things like the back squat, the front squat, military press, or anything from a military shoulder press. So just standing up, whether you have dumbbells, whether you're on the Smith machine with that bar, whether you have just a free weight barbell and you're pressing overhead. You could do a push press, which is essentially the same thing as what I just said, but you're just dipping your knees a little and using that drive to push it up. You can use a heavier weight then. And there's a push jerk where you're not only bending your knees and using that as your momentum, but you're literally like jumping up and exploding up, so it's more explosive. You can see some of that in the Olympics. Those lifts burn a ton of fat, and they all, for the most part, use almost every part of your body. Like if you think about a squat, yeah, everyone thinks your legs and your butt, but really you're using your core because you got to stabilize, you got to maintain a position, you're working your balancing muscles, you're working just about everything when you're squatting, especially if you're squatting a significant amount of weight. So I would recommend, Mike, that you stick with more compound lifts. Stay away from the isolation exercises like leg extensions, bicep curls, tricep extensions. You don't need that stuff. That's all glam, and yeah, that'll help build muscle, but again, that's not what you're exactly looking to do. You want to add strength. In order to add strength, I would recommend you start doing something called Tabata. Basically, what Tabata is you're doing 8 sets, right? And it takes 4 minutes, so you got to be pretty quick in terms of you're not getting a lot of rest during those 4 minutes. You're doing 20 seconds of work and you're doing 10 seconds of rest, and you're repeating that 8 times. You can do 8 sets of bench press. You could do 8 sets of 8 different exercises. You could do like bench press, squat, back squat, front squat, shoulder press, and then you could repeat that twice. You can do whatever you can fit into 8 sets, right? It takes 4 minutes, and you're doing as much as you can. You want to maintain your form, but you don't want to stop. So you want to pick a light to moderate weight that you can continue to do at that rate. That will build strength, and that will also build muscular endurance. And that, to me, will lean you out. That'll burn a lot of fat. That'll really get your heart rate elevated, especially if you're utilizing compound functional movements like the 3 I described to you. And you stay away from the isolation BS that, honestly, unless you're a bodybuilder or a physique competitor, it really doesn't help anybody to do that. In terms of mobility, Mike, I would not recommend, I would, again, staying with compound functional movements, because those actually require mobility. Those actually require you to maintain some semblance of functionality. But on top of that, Mike, I would not recommend you weightlift to maintain mobility. I would recommend you do yoga. And a lot of men, myself included, are very against doing yoga. I remember I used to be a meathead as recently as 6 or 7 years ago. I was a meathead. I went to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. I lifted heavy weight. I power lifted. In fact, I've had quite a few neck and back problems due to the fact that I used to lift really heavy, neglecting my form. Even when I knew what I was doing, I neglected my form because I just wanted to say I benched this, or I deadlifted that, or I squatted that, when in actuality, I wasn't doing it right. I was putting a lot of duress on my joints, and I wasn't even maintaining proper form. So yeah, that's all fun and good. But I would recommend yoga. And honestly, a great program, I might actually get certified in this later this year, but I don't personally teach yoga. But a great yoga program, which is pretty affordable. He has his own app, and he has DVDs, like at-home DVDs that you can order and use at your leisure if you want, is DDP Yoga. You can look that up, ddpyoganow.com, I believe is what it is. And he has a Facebook page if you want to check it out. Just type in DDP Yoga in the search bar. But that, for me, was great with mobility, because I am the least flexible person in the world, and I still see, in just 1 year of doing it, almost exclusively just doing DDP yoga, maybe doing a couple of weightlifting workouts a week in tandem, and playing softball, my mobility and flexibility went through the roof. So Mike, I would highly recommend that you do yoga in addition to your strength training. You want to change it up too, right? So you don't want to do the same thing day in, day out and have the same routine. You want to change things up, and you want to do different methods of fitness. Weightlifting may just be one type for you. I definitely, like I said, recommend you do yoga. Maybe there's something else. Maybe you like jogging or walking or hiking or swimming or biking or playing a sport like myself. Whatever it is, find a few things that you actually enjoy doing that are active and go do them, and you'll be much better off.